down to Biscayne. Yikes. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing rubber frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the flow playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust.
You sound scared.
It's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, Spo, I am scared. 9-9 with a 6-game gauntlet coming up, and they're giving up like 125 offensive ratings to mediocre teams. I don't care if those teams are playing hard. All right, here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on 5 Reasons Sports. I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. I've got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. Again, we are live tonight, so we'll be posting some of your comments as we try to wrap up this game and get you ready for the slaughter in Boston tomorrow. I'd like to be more optimistic, but particularly with the way that Jimmy looked at the end of this game, it's hard to be so. Let's get to today first, though. And let's just start it off because I think everything starts with this, which is that, and we're going to do the player of the game and then defending the house back to back today. So we'll do that stuff that we typically wait a little bit longer in the show because these two things go together. Let's get to the player of the game as the Heat lose in Toronto.
And now it's time for the A-Aggressive Insurance Player of the Night, sponsored by our friend Lynette. You can find her at insurancebylynette.com. That's with 2 N's and 2 T's, insurancebylynette.com. If you need car insurance, renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, or any other type of insurance, she's the person to go to. Based in Lauderhill, she services the entire Tri-County area here in South Florida, and she will make sure to get you the best deal. She'll probably talk to you about the Heat while you're at it. Reach out to her, insurancebylynette.com. And now, the player of the game.
15 of 20, 3 of 4 from 3, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. RJ Barrett had 37 tonight, Brady. Again, this pairs in with defending the house. We'll get to more general stuff in defending the house. What went wrong tonight specifically?
It's just the defense as a whole. Like, I mean, we could pick, at certain players offensively or what's wrong with certain lineups, but as a whole, they're just not defending at a high level. And it's, it used to be, at least early in the season, they used to talk about it not being for 48 minutes. So, like, there would be portions of the game where you'd see the defense that you want to see. I'm not seeing it really at any point in these games. Like, it just feels like that these teams like Toronto that you should not be giving up 98 points through 3 quarters against is getting whatever they want. Like, they're just being, you mentioned it, RJ Barrett, 15 of 20 from the field is that just can't happen. That can't happen when you have that type of focal point, able to kind of collapse the paint and continue to just get good looks at the rim. Like, he was pretty much getting like decent layups constantly inside the arc. And it's just pretty telling that that's hard to recover from just as a team. I mean, I guess the flip side of it is when we're talking about players of the game, like, Tyler deserves a ton of credit because if we're doing a Miami player of the game, I don't know how many games this is going to be this season where they lose and we're sitting here, they spoil another Tyler 30-point game. Like, that's the point we're at, where you almost have Tyler like matching the production of RJ Barrett, but the rest of the team didn't match the rest of the team for Toronto. Like, it just felt like they were just outplaying them. And we could point at certain things like rebounding, but the deficit wasn't as big as like we've seen in the past. Like, it wasn't like where I'm saying this is why they lost. Like, no, there's other reasons why they lost. We could point at certain players, but the defense as a whole. And I know you said we're going to get to it in the segment, but like, I just don't know what the fix is because they're playing these lineups that just aren't positioned to be good team lineup defensively. Like, they're just kind of able to get picked on. They're not playing as much zone. I felt like this was a game where Kelowna Ware probably would have played if he was healthy. Kevin Love does not fit this matchup at all to me. Like, the rebounding stuff over him, like he was a step too slow against all the matchups. They're just a bunch of switchy guys. So like, they were just a step too slow against this team tonight, and it all started with the defense.
Okay. The starting front court were the three core players, the three guys that you've heard of on the Raptors, because they've got a lot of guys out. The three guys that you've heard of combined tonight for 77 points on what are we at here? 30 of 49 shooting. 28 rebounds and 17 assists. I mean, Barrett, Pirtle, and Barnes are now a big three. That's just totally unacceptable. And Eternal and I did a podcast earlier today, and I might have got lost in the shuffle, but I recommend people listen to it. And I'm just at the stage where I'm like, what is the point of all this? And Greg said it in the chat too. Like, where is this going? What is going to pop for this team to make them different? I don't see it on the roster. We now have enough of a sample size with their core group healthy. And we've got one guy of their veteran group. I can't count Pelle Larsson. He's a second-round pick. We've got one guy who's overperformed expectations this year. Okay? And that's it. And you mentioned it, Brady. They really only have 2 plus defenders on the team or in the rotation, because I think Drew Smith is a plus defender. I don't think Jimmy's a plus defender night after night anymore. And Pelle Larsson has played like one, but again, we're talking about a second-round pick that they're now sort of force-feeding minutes because he's providing things that others are not. Duncan is not a plus defender. Jimmy is an average defender at this stage at best. Okay. Tyler is trying. Give him credit for that, but we know you're not going to call him a plus defender. Kevin at this age is not a plus defender. He never really was in his prime. He just positionally knows where to be. Burks, you're just hoping for him to be average. Rozier is certainly not a plus defender. And Jaquez hasn't played like a plus defender this year. And if they went to other guys like Jovic and Thomas Bryant, they're not plus defenders either. Now, Khalil Weir's not going to save all this. He might be a plus defender someday. Okay. This team is not constructed, Alex, and we'll do the spot at the end of this, okay? Because we're kind of tying the two of this together. This team is not constructed to be a good defensive team. That's why even when I was talking to we had Nate Duncan on the podcast, okay, and I was on his before the season. When I was on his, he said I think they'll be a top 8 defense, and I said why? And he said Spo and Bam. I mean, at a certain point, like there's only so many mirrors, okay, and I think they're out of them. And I don't see how this turns into a good defensive team. Am I wrong?
No, not really. I don't think you're wrong. I think it's one thing for the personnel to be, a little bit shaky, right? But it's also like there's personnel and then there's consistent effort. I don't think a team that puts in, like, it's not like they're tapping, they're capping out on defense all the way. I understand that like the personnel limits you, but there's so many lapses that like they wouldn't have had in other years. And yeah, like some of it has to do with personnel and like for example, Terry and Tyler and their body types and how they can get taken advantage of by bigger guys. The Raptors have a lot of bigger guys. Like that type of stuff is 100% fair and valid. But I do think like there's too many lapses. There's too many times where, like their whole defense, as we've talked about for years, is so built to keep teams away from the paint. I just think they've done a poor job of that in some of these games tonight and last game, to be honest. I think like the Raptors are a team that gets to the rim a lot, right? Like that's what they do. They're going to try to attack the paint relentlessly. They're not a team that's going to kill you from the 3-point line. So that should fit into what you're trying to do if you're the Heat on the defensive end of the floor. And I just think they're doing a bad job of executing their game plan. So yeah, I blame some of it on personnel for sure. But I also think that, it's not just like, oh, Jimmy is not as good on defense. I think as a team, there was way too many lapses. Jimmy had a lot of them against RJ. I just think he got way too comfy going to his left. Like he's good. He's a good player. I'm not trying to take that away from him, but he's not somebody who should be unstoppable getting into the paint over and over when that's what he wants to do, right? Like he can hit the 3, he can hit the midi for sure, but he got so comfy getting to his left. They did a bad job taking away, his strong suit and being there in time with the help or even when it was just one-on-one. Like they did a poor job of executing what they were trying to do outside of just the personnel. And Bam, I thought was solid, had his moments too where he had lapses. I think K-Love had a really rough game just from the looks of it on the defensive end of the floor. You didn't feel him as much on the offensive side as you usually do when he's not making the threes. But I think that the defense at the point of attack and at the paint, again, appreciate what Kevin Love has done, but he had a rough night tonight as well. Like I mentioned, I just think all of it, they're not the team that they should be on that end of the floor.
All right, now Ware was injured, so we just want to make that clear. He was not available tonight. So it's not a case of Spo not using him. And as Brady said, I think he likely would have used him over Kevin tonight with the flow of the game and the pace of the game. All right, you know what, Alex, play the spot, and then we'll rotate back into some other things. I have more general points I want to make tonight.
And now it's time for our Defending the House segment, sponsored by our friends over at The Real Estate Shop. You can find them at realestateshopfl.com. That's with 2 P's and an E, realestateshopfl.com, or at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. This is Javier Iglesias and Amanda Martin. They help buyers and sellers in real estate. They're nimble and protective of their clients. They service the entire Tri-County area. That's Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties with a proven on-market strategy. The Real Estate Shop sellers earn the most money in the shortest time frame because Amanda and Javier have a deep understanding of the local market. So check them out. Again, it's at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram, realestateshopfl.com, or give them a call at 954-268-9812. And now, who defended the house?
No one. Okay, let's move on. Okay, let's get to the next part of this. I know you hate small sample size plus minus theater, Alex, but when the eye test matches it, can I tell you what Kevin Love's plus minus was tonight?
Yeah.
Minus 17 in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, Bam helped his own with the chuck it up 3 at the end, which I know helped some people's parlays. He was a plus 15. But Kevin was a minus 17 in 10 minutes, and I think that does match the eye test. All right, here's some other things from tonight, which we have to get to. They're going into a 6-game gauntlet, and I don't think Jimmy's playing tomorrow. I mean, he didn't move. He couldn't move at the end of the game, and he kept bending down. I guess it's the knee this time. It's not the ankle or the back. Now it's the knee. And he didn't play on the last 3 or 4 possessions of the game. Boston lost tonight to Cleveland, by the way, which is going to make them feral tomorrow. So this is a bad situation to send them up to. What did you think of Jimmy's play prior to that, Brady? He ended up 6 of 9 from the floor, 5 of 6 free throws, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 17 points, little impact, in my view.
I thought it was kind of a typical road game against a bad team type start where he kind of comes out not aggressive. And then once it's a close game, I thought he came out a lot more aggressive in the second half. And that's kind of the formula it feels like in these type of games for Jimmy. It's going to be, let's see who else can get it going. Tyler had it going and nobody else really did. So he got them to a certain point. And then obviously it feels like the games that they win, that they take care of bad teams, is the games, specifically they've been at home. I feel like Jimmy's numbers have been better at home. Is when Jimmy kind of sets the stage and he's able to kind of get to the line early, gets the paint early, and it sets up their offense, that when he doesn't do it, it just feels like they're always playing from behind. It feels like the offense, even if Tyler has it going, it just feels like it doesn't set up the offense the way that it does when Jimmy is attacking early. So that was a big issue, obviously. The other thing you mentioned with Kevin Love and the plus-minus stuff, the interesting thing to me right now is this lineup thing that they keep doing, and it's the 5-man bench unit they went to. That hurt Kevin Love's plus-minus itself. They realized that they couldn't do that anymore, so they got Kevin out in 2-3 minutes, and Bam came in. But even the 4-man bench unit with Bam, so it's Terry, Pella, Jaime, who am I missing there? Burks. That lineup is positioned basically for Jaime to be on the ball and aggressive, or it's not going to work. Because Terry's at a stage where he's going to pick his spots here and there. Bam is just not aggressive. It's that simple. Like, he's playing this playmaker role, and it's fine in the starting lineup when you have Duncan and Tyler jumping off flares and pin downs and handoffs constantly. Like, you can make it work. But when that's not the case, and you're out there with Terry and Jaime and Burks and Pella, you just see the game just go south from there offensively, and then you're just looking around waiting for Tyler and Jimmy to come back in and save the day offensively. So I'm not even going to sit here and talk about Jimmy's portion of this. It's more so the fact that they're leaning into this no Tyler Jimmy thing. And I think that's really becoming problematic. If you don't have Terry like in a flow from, jump to end, because he had moments there where he got hot, but it's like, it's just too inconsistent to like rely on in a lineup. And Jaime, the lineup looked great last game. Like that lineup was really good because Jaime was aggressive on the ball. He was attacking. He was getting to the rim. He was converting, all of that stuff. And in this game, when it's not that, when you don't have that lineup is just been awful. So, and then obviously we know what it's been defensively. So that's just a trend that I think we really do need to keep an eye on and what they can do there. I think they probably have to get back to just Jimmy anchoring that lineup instead of Bam because they need an aggressive player in that grouping. And by the way, I know you're going to look ahead to Boston and you're talking about Jimmy. No Jaylen Brown or Derek White tonight, I just wanted to mention. So I don't know if they're going to play tomorrow. Obviously, I don't know if I think Derek White was questionable for this game tonight. So
38 for Peyton Pritchard tomorrow. 38.
Yeah, so I was going to say, it doesn't matter.
Play the over. It doesn't matter.
Drew Peterson was getting closing minutes in that game tonight, I saw. So he's going to probably go off on them.
A Heat legend. Alex, want to give you a stat here. Free throw attempts today. This plays into what we're talking about with Bam. Tyler led them with 7. Made them all, by the way. Jimmy had 6. Bam had 2. Bam had 2. The Jimmy part, again, when he gets more free throw attempts, they tend to win. We know that, but we've covered him a little already. Well, I just don't understand. Like I really believe, and I know Bam had 20 rebounds tonight, so give him credit for that. 4 on the offensive end, and like I said, he was a plus 15. He also had 5 turnovers. I just don't understand why he's backslid like this. There's no other way to put it. Like this is not a case of a slow start or anything. We're almost a quarter of the way into the season. We've seen like 4 good Bam games so far.
I don't think it's honestly. I know people are going to get mad here because Bam is, he's a lightning rod right now when it comes to the Heat conversation. I don't think it's that hard to understand when you look at the role he had the past couple of seasons versus what he's doing now. They're using him more as a playmaker. It's clear that the priority is not to get him going like it was in the past couple of regular seasons where he was consistently taking, not only, the first or second most amount of shots on the team, but it was like, oh, he is all about getting to his spots and working for. They're not playing that game at all for him. They've clearly gone away from it, right? That's part of this whole narrative, which is a true one, of course, that their strategy has been to step away from those mid-range shots. Tyler's not taking as many. Bam is not taking as many. Terry's not taking any. Jaime's not really taking any. It's not just Bam, but they've taken that part away from him, right? Which is kind of his bread and butter outside of when he is a screener and roller. So that part of his game is completely gone. They've clearly they're prioritizing him more as a playmaker because he's an above average playmaker for a big, and you're seeing the assists up every single night. So I think they're basically telling you what they think is the better offense because we've cycled through different versions of Bam and different roles for him on the offensive side of the floor. They're telling you what they think about him. I think they still want him to score. I think he's missing shots, in the paint that he is, he's usually made. And, there's some upside for that to just kind of go back to normal, right? The stuff in the short mid-range, but he's not getting as many. He's not getting into his sweet spot a lot of the time. They're using him more as a handoff guy. They're using him more like you saw the other night, when they had guard screening for him. I think that type of stuff, if you want to get him going, do that more, right? But to me, this whole thing is telling you they're not looking at him as a, second scoring option. He might still get shots up, but it's not, it's in the flow of the offense. They don't want him taking early shot clock jumpers.
So I'm looking at Alex's comment in the comments here. And it's right. They got out rebounded even with Bam getting 20, which is kind of crazy. He did have 7 assists in the playmaking role. And Alex, I see what you're saying. I'm surprised that they made this decision in light of Spo spending the summer with him.
We all
I get it. And you're lagging a little bit, but I get that it wasn't efficient. I understand that, but it's interesting to me. I think. I'm going to admit this. I read it wrong coming off of the Olympics because I thought Spo spending time with Bam in that setting, he would want to open things up for him more. But what actually was going on at the Olympics was Bam was playing as a high-level role player on that team. It's not like in the Olympics they were expanding his game, right? Other than Spo essentially was sitting there watching him shoot threes.
No, you're right. I'm with you there. Look, I just think that when you look at what he's doing, they're telling you how they feel about his game and what they prioritize the most. And it just they did so much for him and he took so many shots that he likes. Like we saw so many possessions, and I like that he can hit those shots, but they did it to one extreme the past couple of regular seasons, and now it's the other extreme where like they're not going to it at all as far as like his midi game and his, short paint game just off of him self-creating, right? Like I think that stuff has gone down the drain, and that's the role change is why you're seeing the assists go way up and the points go down. He's not the second option, like that's not who these plays are for. They're running plays for everybody else, and then occasional plays for Bam. And I do think like there's a lot of positives to him as a playmaker. It's not just like I'm sick of this whole thing where like high level role player this, high level role player that. Every single team, and find me a team that would not pay Bam the amount of money he's making now to
they would
play that role. Because I just think people underrate in general like what a guy like Bam or Draymond. I think Bam is like a pack a punch Draymond, which is a Call of Duty reference, but he is Draymond, except he can give you 20 plus on a night-to-night basis. Shouldn't be relied upon it, but can give you it. Way more athletic, can guard 1 through 5, is a fantastic playmaker for like these are extremely valuable things. I'm sick of the whole like, oh, a role player. If you're good at role player things that like, oh, stars should be above that. No, a lot of stars don't do that stuff, and that's what makes him so valuable. That's why every single team would pay him that money. He shouldn't be relied upon. He was never a scorer. Like when did he didn't come out of high school or college like, oh, this guy is going to be a top 2, top 3 level scorer for you. The fact that he can put up 20 plus for you in the regular season and in the playoffs should be a bonus. Like he's doing the other stuff at an elite level and giving you that as an extra. I just think it's a little bit ridiculous.
I understand what you're saying there, and I'll pivot to Brady on this because I think we should dig into this a little bit more. Is that I get what you're saying, and I think the categorizing him is probably not the right way to go. But on this particular team, the way that they are constructed, and the fact that Jimmy is in some kind of decline. I mean, he's getting hurt every other game at this point. Like this is age. This is what happens. Okay, it's gonna knee. It's the shoulder. It's gonna be the shoulder next or the elbow. It'll be something. Okay, it's just harder for older players. Like the Heat have never relied on a player this old. Never. Dwayne came back and he was an attraction, not a player at that point. They wanted to do a last dance with him. It wasn't about winning. No player at Jimmy's age has ever averaged more than 15 a game for the Heat. None. And they've had a bunch of them. And the only one who did was Dwayne in one season. Okay. But Brady, when I look at it, I'm looking at Herro's numbers today. And we take it for granted at this point. He's 9 of 16, 6 of 12 from 3. Made all of his free throws, had 4 rebounds, had 3 assists, which is actually lower for him, had a couple of steals, yet they were minus 11 in his minutes. He scores 31 points. And again, we're kind of taking it for granted, but I'm not going to do the correlation causation thing again and say they lose when he scores like this. They need Bam to score on this team. They don't have enough scoring. Like Tyler needs a compliment at this point.
Tyler has kept them in so many games this year, and when you talk about the plus minus or like him scoring a lot in losses, like most of the time in these games when they're down big, he's the one that's clawing them back into these games. Like you've seen it time and time again when he like down the stretch of these fourth quarters, he'll go on these runs, and he's just at this point he's just so reliable. You just kind of know what you're getting from Tyler at this stage. And he's maximized his own game in the half court of knowing, the spots he wants to hit. And he's just connecting right now at a high level. And it's just, he's the one player on this team right now that is just consistent as ever. And that's all you could have asked for Tyler for so long. But as for Bam, I mean, look, I'd be fine with the role player thing and the playmaking and all of that stuff if we didn't see what we saw last year specifically. Like, I thought last year was the jump where it was like, okay, we're done with the aggressive conversations. We're done with all that. We're done with, he can just get his bucket from, whenever he gets the ball in the face of stuff. I keep bringing up the mid-range stuff. I think the mid-range ultimately what opened up his offensive game, and we just haven't seen, he hasn't been efficient at it this year, but he also just hasn't gone to it as much, like that dotted line, free throw line stuff. It just feels like either you mentioned it. It's more so the fact of the layout of this team. Like the way this roster is at this moment, they cannot survive playmaking Bam 24/7. They need a Bam that can go get them 20 consistently, not like a once in a while 20. Like they need him getting up shots. The only reason why the 3-point shooting was hyped up was because that it was going to be a counter from all the other stuff. It wasn't just going to be, an accessory to the offense that he can do once in a while. It was like, no, You want that added on to all the free throw attempts, the driving, and the mid-range stuff, and we just have not seen that consistently. And I really do believe that's hurting a lot of the pockets of the game offensively. Like you've seen the stuff where the shooting hits and Tyler and Duncan are clicking, or the time when Jimmy's driving and kind of getting to the lane and the line and all that stuff. The Bam, what was so good about last year, and I'm not gonna sit here and hype up last year because last year was not a good regular season or a good offense. But he got them through pockets of the game when that other stuff wasn't happening. Like when the three-point shooting wasn't going or Jimmy was kind of taking a night off, Bam was the guy that got them through those pockets, and you just don't have that right now. So these pockets of the game where they don't have it going, it just goes south quickly. And you're seeing a Toronto team that can go up to a double-digit lead. So
they need to find a middle ground.
But can they? Like, do they? I don't know if they have that. I just don't know what that middle ground would be. The middle ground is Bam scoring. The middle ground is Bam being aggressive and kind of changing the projection of the offense. I just don't know what other option you have, especially when Terry is in and out and Jaime is not playing at the aggressive level that he was last year.
Well, I think Eternal and I got into this on the pod today. I just think that everything is a zero-sum game with this team. They don't make each other better. Like I just don't think that 1 + 1 + 1 does not equal 4, 3.5. It equals like 2, 2.5. That's kind of where they're at. And it just seems like Bam has receded as Tyler has ascended. And we know too that Jimmy is not in a state where he's going to ascend or be counted all the time. I also don't want to pass a couple of things. I don't think Duncan was particularly good tonight. On the defensive end, I don't think he was good at all. And he also had 9 missed shots and 4 turnovers. Like the role players play some role in this. They got to get more consistent play from him, from Jaquez. Burks played limited minutes tonight. We talked about it being a bad matchup for Love. And then the Rozier thing, moving him to the bench is fine. He doesn't belong in the starting lineup with the way that he was playing, and he doesn't fit with Tyler there. But it's not really like it's made them much better. He played 29 minutes tonight. It's still a roller coaster with him. When he's making off balance shots, he looks good. When he's not, he does some things out there that you're like, well, do they have somebody else to put on the floor? And that's why I'm saying, like, we keep talking about a middle ground, but it's like it almost seems like Spo keeps trying all these things to kind of throw them at the wall and see if it sticks, because the roster just doesn't give him any clear answers at this point.
He went back to what's comfortable and essentially went away from what he thought. What I'm assuming, right? Because I don't want to speak for him, but with how much he went away from it, because we're talking about two extremes between his role on offense before he had the green light to do, all the midi stuff, and now where it seems like that's not really a priority whatsoever, right? Like that's the middle ground that I'm talking about. Like there's got to be some space for him to be able to do that. It feels like, they've got to encourage that, but not make it the biggest part of their offense. And one thing I did want to say about this game, one big number, is that both teams took a lot in the short mid range tonight. The Heat shot 5 of 21 in that area. Like it's one thing for them to be below average at the rim as they always are, right? But in the short mid range to shoot 5 of 21, and that's to be clear, that's outside of 4 feet, inside of 14. That's usually where the Heat are pretty good, right? Like they've had a down year there, but 5 of 21 is unacceptable. On the other hand, you have the Raptors going 16 of 27 in that same area, which is just under 60%, where the Heat are going 24%. Like they're just playing out. Not only did they not defend, to the kind of standard that we're used to them defending, but now like they're missing these shots that used to be expected to go in at least more often than not. Like, and they're not just missing them, like they're missing a lot of them. They're doing stuff that doesn't, seem like themselves. And tonight, another thing with that, the turnovers. They had a lot of, uncharacteristic turnovers. And I think like they did a good job, a decent job, I think, forcing Toronto into turnovers, even though like the Heat's half-court defense was god-awful. But, they were turning the ball over just as much.
Well,
and, like,
nine of their
mid-range. Like that's really tough to overcome.
9 of their 14 turnovers were from Bam or Duncan, by the way. So, and not 9 out of their 14 came from Bam or Duncan. The other ones were Jaquez with 2, Rozier with 1, Larson with 1. With as much as the ball's in Tyler's hands, he had 1, just 1. And Jimmy didn't turn it over in his minutes. We were going to talk more about Boston today. Let's get to the play of the day, and then we'll wrap this thing up. I just think there's bigger stuff at work here, and They scored 116 tonight. It came down to almost the final possession. But to me, this team is like, it's just broken. Like, it's just you're trying to take different pieces, and Spo's not having his best year either. But it's just like you're trying to take different pieces. I just don't think there's anything that's additive at this point. And I keep looking at the roster, and I'm like, what's going to pop to make this different? We expected Jaquez and Jovic to be two guys that pop, and Nico doesn't play, and he's healthy. And Jaquez has been no impact except for 2 games this year. Anyway, play of the day.
And now it's time for the X-Ray of the Play of the Day, brought to us by our friends over at Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services. Nelson and his team will bring the X-ray equipment and the staffing to you if you work in a hospital or a medical office. Get a consultation today at c-armandstaffing.com or give them a call at 561-891-9620. Their fleet of trucks at your service. Again, it's Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services, 561-891-9620. And now, the X-Ray of the Play of the Day.
Brady, give me something.
I mean, it's Tyler. I like there was 2 plays early in the game. I mean, he hit a logo 3 on a broken play, and then another late clock corner fading step back. And I think that sums up what we're talking about here, which is like there's too many times where Tyler has to clean up a broken offense, a broken play, just everything. Like that just feels like the point they're at, where he's just having to bail them out time and time again. Where there was like the games in the past where he went on that run, I think it was Detroit, and they ended up losing anyway, but goes on the run of all those threes late where he almost bails them out of games. It's like at some point he's going to need some help. Like it's always been about trading Tyler for help, but at this point Tyler is the guy that needs the help, and that's kind of what we keep coming back to, is finding the guy that's going to be, or finding some type of consistency. But I think that Tyler deserves a lot of credit for the adjustments that he's made to his game, and just the consistency that he's finding within it. Like, it's not easy to like be a mid-range guy for your entire life from high school on and just say, okay, I'm being told to cut out mid-ranges. I have to take more threes, and I'm going to, take contact and be better at finishing layups, which has not always been his strong suit. And he's done it at a completely high level, and it's leading to 30-point nights time and time again. So, like, he deserves a ton of credit, and it just feels like so many times we're sitting on these shows talking about that Tyler, giving credit to Tyler, and it's just like it's unnecessary that we can't translate it to a win. That it's like, okay, like he can't have any help to kind of get him over the edge, that we could be praising him even more. They could be, on an above 500 team, and we're pushing the All-Star stuff, but it just feels like every time we're talking about it, it's in a game like this and a loss to Toronto.
Right, and I'm seeing a comment in here from Jay King and others. Didn't we want to trade for a superstar that would bail a team out in the clutch and go get a go-to bucket? Now here it turns into one, and it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I want to make that clear. I'm not blaming him for the losses like maybe we used to. You can't blame someone for losses when they're shooting over 50% from the floor and they have an effective field goal percentage like he has. I'm not doing that at all. I'm just saying we got the pop from Tyler that people had sort of given up on, to be honest. I mean, weren't even waiting for anymore. We did not expect this. I don't know anybody who expected him to go to another level like this year, especially as Brady's saying, playing a different role. And you know what? It hasn't mattered. And to me, that tells me this build is done. Because to me, that was the one thing that I don't know if anybody was expecting. We kept saying they need a consistent scorer, someone they can go to get a bucket. He's done it game after game after game after game, and everything else has fallen apart. Not because of him, but because there's structural flaws, and that's why I went from being somewhat optimistic coming into the season to saying I'm seeing that, and I'm saying they have to be seeing this at this point. And I'm going to give you their next 6 games, okay? At Boston, coming off a loss to Cleveland, okay? Whether or not they're missing a couple pieces, that's going to be a tough spot. Lakers at home Wednesday. LeBron's only trip down here, one of the few he'll make at all. The Heat have played well against the Lakers, particularly at home. So maybe they get that one. They'll be coming off, 1 day of rest. They'll fly back late Monday night. They'll have a day Tuesday with no practice. We'll see. But is Jimmy going to be healthy? Who knows? At this point, it doesn't look like it. Then they get 2 days off, and they play the Suns at home. I'd like to see them defend KD the way that they're playing right now. The Suns have finally started to get healthy. Then they get the Cavs at home on Sunday evening. team that is first in the East and just got a revenge after a loss to Boston. Then they play the Thunder, and then they play the Magic. The Magic, by the way, who have continued to win without what everybody assumed was their best player. And then after that, they play a Nets team that is at least competing. I mean, but again, you can't take anything for granted with the Heat right now. And then they get the Magic again. And then after a game against the Hawks, they get the Rockets, who are one of the surprise teams in the NBA. They had to get to this point better than 9-9. That's why when people are saying where they are, or they're 6th, they're 7th in the East and all that kind of stuff, they've had a soft schedule. They've had a soft schedule, and they've punted on games that they should not have punted on. And tonight was one of those. And I look at it right now and I say, and I'll let you close on this. When we get out of this 6 games, I mean, you can go deeper than that, but the next 6 games are all against certain playoff teams, right? I mean, the Lakers and Suns, maybe they'll be playing, but they certainly have the talent to be more. I mean, are we going to come out of this saying, okay, they're going to pivot, go younger? They're not going to tank. They don't do that. But are they going to take a different direction after these 6 games if they go badly?
I think they can get to that point if it goes bad enough. So if they have a losing record in this stretch, which is probably, not very unlikely at all, right? But if they do it in like a bunch of close games, maybe it's not the case. But if they're getting embarrassed, I could see something like that happening. I think these next few games are going to be very telling. Like you said, like you just can't avoid it. You have playoff team after playoff team after playoff team. And they've done like a generally like decent job at taking care of business other than tonight, against like teams that are supposed to be worse than them. But like they need to prove that they can actually beat some good teams. And I know it's all about getting to the playoffs and then going from there, and that they don't treat like regular season matchups like prime time. But you know what? They probably should, because like this team is one that needs every single win they can get. I think they've got to, show something in this next stretch of games. It's just going to be tough if you don't have Jimmy, right? We got to see what's going on with him. And it's just unfortunate too, because then you're going to have the built-in excuse of like, oh, you didn't have Jimmy for some of these games or whatever. Like I'm almost like ready just to, I'm ready for the next one already, because I want to see what they look like against a good team where they can't, like that Raptors game, right? This game tonight would have been over earlier if it was against one of these good teams like that. They gave you opportunities with some of those turnovers, with some of the, like even at the end with the missed free, like there was plenty of opportunities. It shouldn't have gotten to that place in the first place, but it's like you can't do this stuff versus those good teams. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, and it just feels like everything's up in the air, especially because we don't know if Jimmy's going to be a part of the stretch.
And that's the thing I want to get to that you said there, because if Jimmy's out for this stretch, and they lose some games, that they can't, nobody can look at that and say, well, that was an anomaly. Jimmy missed some games, and so we lost. That's part of what they deal with at this point. Jimmy is going to miss time. That is a part of this team. Pat can call for all of the availability and everything else, but if somebody's body is breaking down, it's breaking down. Like we're seeing it on the court. Like he's already had 3 different issues that we know of this year, right? Ankle, back, now the knee. These are all the back. I don't know that he's had back injuries, but he's had ankle and knee issues before. We know he's had shoulder issues. He's had elbow issues. These things don't get better when you cross 35. And I know it's unfair to focus on Jimmy so much because he carried this organization to places they probably should not have gone over the time that he's been here. But at this stage, he cannot be counted on to lead this thing. And unfortunately, Tyler leading it when Bam's not coming along in all phases. Bam can be great in all the other areas. If he's not providing that additional scoring to Tyler, and the role players don't come along for the ride, this team cannot compete with the better teams in the league. And we can kid ourselves by looking at the Eastern Conference, but ultimately they're nowhere close to where Cleveland are, where Boston is. And in the West right now, they'd be 11th. They'd be 11th. That was coming into today. And so I just think there needs to be some realism about this. Anyway, thanks to everybody for joining tonight. We said 20 minutes. I'm going to get it done in under 40. We'll be back tomorrow night. I'm not going to Boston this time, so this can't be blamed on me. Thanks to Brady. Thanks to Alex. Thanks to all of our sponsors. Be back on Playback tomorrow night as well at 7:30.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.